Okay, good morning. Sorry for this being a recording rather than a live. For some reason, can't get it to stream today, so I'm just going to record the few questions I have. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in. Again, my name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm a part of Melco's application team, and this is our DesignShop talk where we try to go over whatever questions you might have regarding DesignShop or anything really, and try to help you get more comfortable and more effective using your tools. So we did get a few questions sent in via email this week, and a few were posted on the little question thing as well. So I was going to go through those since we're recorded now. One of the first ones, can you please tell me why these strange lines are show up in the real view but not in the 3D view? Do I need to remove them? What are they? Help out, sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to go open up, maybe. There we go. I'm going to go open up DesignShop, and I'm going to actually open up that B so we can look at it. So File, Open. I'm going to open up that guy. Okay, so what we're looking at are these things here. When you notice when I go into Show Stitches in 3D, they go away. Those are jump stitches, essentially, travel paths that were programmed in. When you look at them up close, if you want to get rid of them, I'm going to start just hiding things so we can look at them one at a time. And let's just look at this guy for the moment. So the very first thing is the center of the design. I know that because I looked at this ahead of time, but that's where the origins cross. So there's a possible needle penetration right there, which is literally just one stitch. How I know it's one stitch is if I zoom in on it, I'm going to turn this off, and I can click on this button here, which will show me, it will toggle the expanded point so I can actually see it. And you see there's a little X there. Well, again, if I click on that, I can select it and hit delete. This whole element, that's all it is. All right, so I can just delete that expanded, delete the trim, and now I'm on to the next one. The second one, again, if I just turn them all off and look at this, again, it's a running stitch. It's a placement for the applique letter. And you'll see, again, I've got that jump stitch programmed in. You can leave them. They won't sew. If you want to get rid of them, you don't like them. Down here, again, you select the object you want to modify, click on this to toggle to the expanded points. Then right here, you click on Expanded Editing Mode. Now I can click on that, and you'll see it puts a crosshairs on the stitch. If I just hit the delete key on my keyboard, one's deleted, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm at my starting point of the design. So you can go through all of these and do that if you wish. They're jump stitches. It's whatever software or whatever created these, when it saved off the file, it put them in. When you have a certain number of jumps, when you load it over into the OS, it will kind of compile them all into a single long jump stitch, and then it will trim them out for you, depending on your settings. So you don't really need to get rid of them unless you just don't like seeing them there. Okay, again, if you turn them into 3D mode, you don't see them anyway. All right, so those are what these jump stitches are. There was another question: how do I get the Freeform tool to stop rounding the shape out? I would like the corners to stay sharp, essentially. That wasn't the exact wording of the question, but the general idea. All right, so if you're not familiar what the Freeform is, for instance, if I'm doing a complex fill, normally you would left click for straight points, right click for curves, right? And then when you're done with the shape, you hit enter to close it, enter because I don't have any holes in this one, give it a start, a stop, and a stitch direction. All right, that's if you're going to do it using traditional methods. Now, if instead you want to use the Freeform tool, what is that first? Well, it defaults to using this triangle and dot, which is what I just showed you. Left click and right click for your straight points and curves. Over here, there's a Freeform digitizing tool. So if I click on the complex fill and then Freeform, now where I draw, I'm just left clicking and holding. That is the shape that's going to be drawn. And you'll notice it rounds it all out nicely. Okay, so you can literally just draw whatever shape it is you want. So if I want to draw a flower, I'm drawing with a mouse, so this instead of a tablet, so this is rather awful. But anyway, you get the idea. All right, so it will automatically round everything out. Now, if you tried to do straight points, you'll notice that, oh, it would help. It would help if I actually drew it as a complex and not as random. There we go, complex, straight, or complex, the freeform. So it's still curving these. You would have to modify them to get them to go straight. So to get it to go straight, I'm going to get out of that tool, select the shape you want to modify, and let's say I want that to be a straight point instead of a curved. I can hit Shift and left click. That'll convert it to a straight point, and then I can, on this line, hold my Control key and right click, and that will make both of those straight. There isn't a way for it to automatically do that other than doing this. You can sometimes get the points to work out right, but in general, it's going to try to smooth everything out for you when you're using the Freeform tool. Now you can use it instead of just dragging around. You can still use a tablet and your pen by using your complex fill and your regular Bezier digitizing, and just tap on the screen, and that will give you your straight points. So you can draw that way if you wish. Okay, so that's ugly. All right, let's see, what other questions do we have? Is there a way to put the ruler to turn on with the column or fill function to see how wide you're making the elements as you digitize? So yes, but no. All right, so if I'm on the fill tool, notice down here I've got an X and Y location. I have a length and an area. I think A is area. I know L is length. So it's in points. If I'm going to, I can turn on the grid. That's another way. You can set your grid to a known quantity. But if I'm going to go from point to point, notice down there I'm at 125 points long right there. And just to show, I'm going to do small, enter, start, stop, stitch direction. So down at the bottom, it had told me 125. Well, if you look at this, and if I actually go measure it from point to point, you'll see I didn't click exactly, but it's 125 points across. So while there is no ruler on the screen per se, down here you can watch to see what length you're at for them. So there, I'm at 86, now it goes back to 0. Now I'm at 75 points there, 378, so on and so forth. So you can see the length of your lines down here where it says L. Okay, hopefully that helps. But you're not going to get the ruler to show up here. It's going to show down here the data that you would see in the ruler. Okay, what other questions? I have OS 9. Okay, DS9 or OS 9? If I want to correct in wire edit mode, I change my design to that, but how do I save it back to not wire edit mode like it was before? I don't quite understand the question. So I think what you're saying is I have something in DesignShop, I open it up, and it was, let's say, a DST or an EXP. I open it up, I convert it to wireframe, I make changes. Now, how do I put it all back? Well, you would save it off as a DST or an EXP or some other expanded format type again, and that will get rid of all your wireframes again, so that it will just save as expandeds. Okay, so that would be what you would do there. I think that's what you're asking. If not, feel free to type in later and let me know, and we'll answer it again. This one wasn't sent, this next question wasn't sent in, it's just one I saw online, asking about patches. So if you haven't seen them, there's a bunch of videos that have been done on Melco's page about the how to make patches. This specifically was just kind of drilling into it more. So, I have a patch, how do I fill it with white stitching? So how do I make it fill in all with thread rather than having to use fabric? That's how I'm reading the question anyway. So how do we do that? Well, you would take whatever design you're doing for the shape. Okay, so let's say I just have a circle patch. Okay, so I've got my walk to place it. And there was a question, is there a standard size patch set? Standard is kind of a broad term. I would say probably not. I mean, if anything standard, you'll see a lot of 3-inch rounds, 4-inch rounds. I don't know. It's really, they're so custom. People make them whatever suits their needs. So I don't know to say there's a specific standard, but it's whatever your customers end up wanting. But, so I have a walk. That's going to show me where the patch goes. If you want it to fill with stitches, rather than being a walk, you would do it as a complex fill. All right. So to draw a complex fill, if I already have the circle, I can just duplicate it. Change the color if you want. I'm just changing the color so we can see it. And then here you have change element from one type to another. If I click on that, I can say complex fill, and then I can put add or replace. Well, I don't want to add it. I just want to get rid of that walk and make it a fill. So now I have a fill, and that would be all fill stitches on there. You can play with different patterns on it. So down here where you have pattern fills and presets, if you look at those, you can get some neat effects into your stitching to where it looks, I don't know, like different twill designs, if you will. Now, if you're going to do that anyway, you can use twill rather than sewing it all. One, because it'll end up sewing faster. You can see this one, just the fill, has over 5,500 stitches. So you're going to spend 6 or 7 minutes at least just sewing in the fill. Whereas if you put a piece of fabric down, you take away all that time in sewing. It's a personal preference. If you want all sewn, 100% sewn patches, this is a way to do it. Okay, to get the fill in there. If you don't have that change element from one type to another, because that is level dependent, what you would do is just digitize your circle. So you would say select complex fill. I usually click the circle to get a perfect circle if that's what I'm going for, or you just draw whatever your shape is. One click, then the other, hold the shift key, locks it to a perfect circle, and there you have it. Then you can modify the properties to be whatever you want. Okay, making sure you have underlay, that your density is appropriate, and all of that. Let's see, what settings do I add or change in DesignShop? For what? For the fill? I'm not quite sure. I would love to have my patches 100% embroidery. So you would add a fill. One thing you got to be careful of if you're not going to use fabric is the fact that things are going to shrink some. So you would have to make sure you're compensating for the stitch direction and how much everything's going to kind of shrink up, and that you're not going to poke through whatever your base material is. So if you're sewing on plastic, you need to make sure the density is not tight enough to where it's going to slip free. Along the edge, you can do some techniques like a zigzag around the fill that will end up getting covered later, but that way, here I'll show you. So if I do shift and then a satin stitch, and I'm going to put that before and make that a tackle, that might help hold everything together a little bit for you so that you don't have everything straight punctured along that edge. And then that's going to get covered up anyway later with a satin stitch. So it's just an idea of things to play with to try to help hold it all together long enough to get the embroidery on and then put the satin border. Okay. Do I use twill as my material for my patches? Mostly embroidery. I like twill personally. I like how it looks. I think it's a personal preference. You can do patches on pretty much any material you want. You know, if it's a synthetic material, the benefit you get with that is you can use a wood burning tool or a lighter or something like that to seal the edges so that you don't have to worry about fraying. So it's less important, like particularly if you want to cut out patches after the fact. You can sew it all on a bigger piece of material, cut it out, and then either use a lighter, a soldering iron, wood burning tool, something to seal the edges, laser, whatever it's going to be. And there was a question about the typical size for patches. Those were the only questions I saw. I'm going to so sorry we had a little bit of streaming difficulties today, but please remember to send in your questions. You can type them on this. I'll try to check back later today since we're doing this one a little not standard for what we usually do. and answer any questions there. Otherwise, send them into applications@melco.com and we'll get them on our list to answer. All right, well, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And again, my name is Samantha Mirabal with the Applications team. Thanks.